Rock and metal invasion. Rock and metal invasion. Rock and metal invasion. Rock and metal invasion.
Hi, welcome to Rock and Metal Invasion. My name is Steve. Coming up on the show today, I'm doing my 10 favorite hair metal title tracks. So the title track from an album, from a hair metal album, my favorite title tracks. So in no particular order, I've chosen 10 albums and chosen 10 title tracks. I made the rule that you couldn't have a band appear more than once. And like I said, not ranked in any particular way. And there's quite a few as well that were pretty close to making the top 10. It's always difficult, I find, ranking songs because, you know, a good song is a good song. And to say one song's better than another can be a little tricky, I find. But these are the 10 that really just stood out to me. And also from albums that I thought and bands that I thought, yeah, you'd really have to say this is a hair metal album or this is a hair metal band. Now, you know, again, you know, that whole term of what is hair metal and, you know, that sort of thing. I think really, as I've said before, those bands that came out roughly between about 83 and 92 sort of thing would qualify. Now, I've actually got an album from 93 in this list here, but I still feel like it's a band that gets lumped into the hair metal category. All right, so let's get into it. So my top 10 hair metal title tracks, or my favorite 10 hair metal title tracks. My first one, and some of these are probably going to be a little bit obscure to some of you, and this might be one of them. This is Below the Belt by TKO. Really awesome song. I love the riff that kicks off the song. Now, this is Brad Sinsel on vocals, and this is actually the final TKO album, and this was their third album. They released their second album called In Your Face, came out a few years prior to that, and then they had their debut, I think, actually came out. I don't have that one. It came out in the late 70s, and Seattle band. Of course, Brad Sinsel then goes on to form Suicide Squad. They put out a 4-track EP, and then the War Babies, who I've talked about a little bit recently as well. And yeah, look out for the War Babies. The Vault has just been released. Sounds pretty good. I haven't got it yet, but you can get it on vinyl, and it's got, you know, obviously, like the title says, a number of songs from, you know, that from the Vault or unreleased songs. So that could be worth checking out. That's another good band as well. I think when I talked about War Babies, I was talking about it on my One and Done show. So yeah, TKO Below the Belt. Check it out. It's a really good song. Now, also, I should have mentioned, I've created a YouTube playlist. So on it's, you'll see the link in the description. So all 10 songs, if you want to listen to them, you can listen to them via my playlist that I've created from YouTube. And the link for that is in the description. And one more thing about TKO, like I said, their second album was called In Your Face. Believe it or not, I have got 3 albums in my collection that I can think of off the top of my head, where the title is the album is In Your Face. So there's TKO In Your Face, there's Shout and their album In Your Face, and then they're always amusing one to say, Kingdom Come In Your Face. All right, and there's probably more maybe, you know, but that's the 3 I can think of in my collection. All right, anyway, so that was my first one, favorite hair metal title tracks. Second one, another slightly obscure one, at least it's not major label. This is Surgeon and When Midnight Comes. Really good hard rock one. This one, they've, you know, this is Jack Ponte on guitar. Does a lot of the songwriting. He's the most famous guy from this band. He's not the vocalist, but he does the guitar work and does a lot of the songwriting. This is on Music for Nations and came out around 84, 85, I think. I posted on Instagram quite recently an advert for this album, and the advert sort of was quite interesting because it's sort of the way they were advertising the album. They said the type of album Bon Jovi should have made or something like that, which I thought was quite interesting because there's some links to Bon Jovi. Jack Ponte had a song on Bon Jovi's first album called Shot Through the Heart, which is also on this album, that he co-wrote because he used to be in a band with John Bon Jovi. So Shot Through the Heart from Bon Jovi's first album is also on this album. But yeah, I think probably the best song on this album is the title track, When Midnight Comes. Really, really good song. And there's some other good ones on it, but actually that's one of the sort of more heavy, one of the heavier songs on the album, and one of the best. So yeah, When Midnight Comes, check that out. And actually, it does sound like it could have been, like a heavy Bon Jovi song as well. That one. All right, this is another quite heavy song, but and another lesser known band, perhaps. This is, and there's been a few bands with this name, but this is German band Steeler and Undercover Animal. Now, this is a great song. Really love it. Now, you've got Axel Rudy Pell here on guitar, which, he is a fantastic guitar player. And the riff on this song is fantastic. A lot of my favorite songs just that I happen to really like are those ones that just start off with a really great guitar riff. And this one is no exception. So title track for Undercover Animal. It's a pretty good album as well, but for me, easily the standout song is the title track. And like I said, Axel Rudy Pell on guitars. No one else in the band I'm that familiar with. Produced by Tommy Hansen and Tommy Newton. They come up quite a bit as producers, especially for German bands. But and I think this might be their third album. I'm not actually sure how many albums Steeler put out. I've got the one previous to this, which is also pretty good. And then I think there's another one prior to that as well. I think this is the last Steeler album, and then Axel Rudy Pell goes solo, and he puts out some great stuff as well. For me, the best Axel Rudy Pell album would be Eternal Prisoner. Really good album. That one, it's my favorite. Unfortunately, hasn't been reissued or hasn't been issued on vinyl yet that I know of. Some of his solo albums have been issued on vinyl that weren't originally, but that one I'm still waiting for. So hopefully that gets a pressing on vinyl at some point. But this is a good album, and Undercover Animal, great song. Check it out. All right, so that's three, like I said, in no particular order. This one might be a little bit more familiar to people. Heavy Petting and Rock Ain't Dead. Love this band. This band, I think, were hoping to be the next Def Leppard. And from what I can hear, it's amazing that they weren't. This is a great album, especially side one. Every song on here I love. Now, this is one of the first albums I got when I started getting into the hard rock and heavy metal scene, in the mid 80s. So that always plays a bit of a part, I think. I think some of those first few albums I got, I instantly sort of fell in love with. But this is a great title song. There's a music video for it as well. It's a bit weird, it's kind of interesting too. Like I said, really solid album. They released another album after this. This is their second album. So their debut is also pretty good. Their debut, perhaps a little bit more new wave of British heavy metal influence. This is a lot more commercial. I think it's produced by Mac. He's quite a well-known producer, this one. They put out another album after this, but then it actually got shelved for a while, and then it finally got released. But yeah, it was all a bit too late. And I think they've reformed. They put out a 4-track EP quite recently. Not too much more has been sort of heard from them. Really good song, that one. So Rock Ain't Dead, that's my fourth selection. Right, my fifth one, like I said, there is actually one from 1993 on the list here. And in theory, that's kind of when hair metal was pretty much not a thing. And this is a band that when they came out, they had a surprise hit and were surprisingly successful for a band that were coming out in 1990. I think their debut came out in 92. In fact, this could have even been a 1994 release rather than 1993. It is. So this came out in 1994. So not even 1993. It's 1994. The band, you might have guessed, I don't know, but I did say their debut album came out in 1992 and they had a surprise hit. This is 1994, and this is Jackal, Push Comes to Shove. So the title track for this album, I think, is really good. Now, to my knowledge, it's only come out on this picture disc. I don't think there's any other way you can get it on vinyl. It's got a hype sticker here. Make your Sega and Nintendo games rock. Turn down the sound and play this loud. Push comes to shove. That's one way you can get this album on vinyl. You get the picture disc. It's a good album too. I think it's a really good follow-up to their debut. I probably prefer their debut slightly, but there's some good songs on here. So yeah, it's a picture disc. There's the other side. Pretty cool. But yeah, push comes to shove, it's like one of the best AC/DC songs, sort of thing. And they do have some sort of AC/DC type influences in there a little bit as well, with some sort of southern rock, sort of like southern rock AC/DC. I don't know. They're just, and they have their own sound, I think, as well. You know, Jesse James Dupree is fantastic on vocals, and you know, interestingly enough, too, the album after this, they do a duet. Jesse does a duet with Brian from AC/DC, Locked and Loaded, which is a really awesome song. But yeah, push comes to shove. All right, so that's five, so halfway through. Now, most of these are fairly, actually, you know, by hair metal sort of standards or hard rock standards, they're fairly heavy songs. They rock pretty hard. This one's more in the mid tempo. I thought, you know, because I usually prefer the heavier songs, but I do quite like this one. It's not, I wouldn't call it a ballad, but it's mid tempo. Does start off soft, but then you know it does crank up a little bit. And it's the title track from Europe and Prisoners in Paradise. So there's a music video for this as well. Pretty epic music video, really high production. But yeah, great song. I really like this album. I don't even know if this is the best song from this album, but I do really like the title track. So yeah, this album kind of sunk really without too much getting too much attention. But it is a really good album produced by Bo Hill and sounds great. They even had to go back. Supposedly, they recorded a lot of songs for this album. They even had to go back into the studio and re-record some more songs because you know the record company, for whatever reason, were like, I don't know if this is going to be a hit. We need some more songs. And I think that delay probably didn't help them because by the time this did finally come out in 1991, for bands like this, it was starting to get a bit tougher. And yeah, I remember even back in the day reading reviews, magazines weren't giving it much attention. So, you know, the previous album, you know, obviously the previous album being the follow-up to the Final Countdown, which had been a massive hit, hadn't really had the big hit, but it'd probably done okay. But this one, very little business at all. And so they pretty much split up, you know, because the 90s are pretty hard for a lot of these type of bands. They split up all through the 90s. But of course, they got back together again. And a lot of people really like the albums they've been putting out recently. But yeah, I really like this album, and I like the title track, Prisoners in Paradise. All right, now this one's a lot more familiar to people, I'm sure. And, you know, almost too familiar. I almost didn't count it because I thought, you know, everyone knows this one. And I've heard this song so much, but it is a classic song. So, yeah, Mötley Crüe, Shout of the Devil. I mean, what more can you say, really? It's probably an essential song for them to play in concert still. You know, Vince sounds really good on this. I think, you know, it's a real anthem type song. This is a great album. Probably not, it's not my favorite song on the album, but it's a good, solid song, definitely. And I think it really just adds to all the imagery and everything that they had going on at the time. So, yeah, I think this is a really good song from one of their best albums. And yeah, so Shout at the Devil. All right, next one. One of my favorite bands. Not a band necessarily that, you know, had massive success. I think a lot of people might have thought they had everything it took to be successful. They got some Guns N' Roses type vibes, and I think the title track that I'm going to talk about, which was also the first music video, had everything to be a hit, but it wasn't really. But Love Hate, Blackout in the Red Room. So I've talked about this album a little bit, of course, on my channel, and I think people who have watched my channel know I really love this band, especially the first two albums. They're just classics. I even actually prefer the follow-up, Wasted in America, more. But at the same time, Blackout in the Red Room would be one of their best, if not their best song. Really great song. So you had to include that. So yeah, with a lot of these, the songs that I'm saying are my favorite title tracks, a lot of them have music videos and were singles for the band. This one I don't think there is a music video for, but it is the title track. And I think they probably should have released it as a single and put out a music video. I think they only got one music video for this album, which is a bit of a shame. Maybe they should have chosen the title track because I think it's a great song. And the band is Leatherwolf and the song is Street Ready. This kicks ass. Love this song. This is a really good album. I mean, to say they're hair metal again is a little bit debatable because they're actually, very much like a heavy metal band, really 80s heavy metal. They get quite heavy at times. They've got 3 guitar players. So yeah, there's lots of riffs. It's pretty heavy. I think they wanted to be maybe heavier than what they actually were because they were trying to sort of still be commercial enough. They're on a major label. But I think Street Ready is that song, Street Ready. It's still heavy but melodic, and it's a great song. But it's a good album, like Wicked Ways is really good. I think what was the single? The Way I Feel? Or no, maybe it was Hideaway. But anyway, there was one single for it, but yeah, they had the back. And now I think it's just Dean Roberts who's in the band now. He's the drummer. He's so the band's still existing, but Dean's the only guy, original guy. Yeah. Anyway, Street Ready, great song. If you haven't checked that one out, check it out. Oh, my final one. This is my 10th and final favorite. 10 of my favorite hair metal title tracks from one of my favorite bands. I've sometimes said maybe it's my favorite band, W.A.S.P. And The Last Command. So yeah, this is a really good song, and maybe there's definitely I have better. Well, there's W.A.S.P. songs I like a lot more than The Last Command, but I do still really like the song, and it is of course a title song. So yeah, from their second album. I mean, Wild Child, which is on this, I think that's an even better song. Even songs like Cries in the Night, that's so good. I quite like Running Wild on the Streets from this album. I'm not a big fan of Blind in Texas. That was one of the singles. But yeah, it's a pretty solid album. It's not my favorite W.A.S.P. album, but it's good. And yeah, so there we go. So that's my last and final selection for favorite hair metal title track. And again, a band like W.A.S.P., some people might go, they're not really hair metal because sort of more just heavy metal, perhaps 80s heavy metal, but people do put them in that category. So I felt like that was a band that could qualify. So and like as I said, I think at the start, I could carry on and show you a lot more songs from that are title songs from albums in my collection that I really like that fit that sort of hair metal category. But leave it at 10. Hope you enjoyed that. If you did, make sure you hit the thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. We're coming pretty close to 1,000 subscribers, which would be fantastic. Yeah, as I've mentioned, there is merch as well. If you want to get some merch, I'm wearing the t-shirt at the moment, but there's a coffee cup and all sorts of stuff. If you're interested, there's a link for that in the description. And yeah, that's it for today. We'll catch you later. Okay, see ya.